Can you hear me in the back row? Yeah. Okay. If I get too far from the mic, start waving your hands or something. Tendency to do that. One thing I learned a long time ago is that if I'm asked to give a political talk several years in advance, and for some reason the organizers want a title, there's one that never fails, always works. The current crisis in the Middle East. So for that reason alone, I'm not at all surprised at the headlines in the newspapers the last couple of days. In fact, nobody should be surprised, at least nobody who's been paying attention to the quite extensive studies of public opinion in the Arab world. I don't know about here, but in the United States, they never get publicized, but they're public and major institutions. You can find them. What's clear is that anger at the United States, and in fact most of the West, has just reached a fever pitch. In fact, one of President Obama's great achievements, for which he hasn't been given enough credit, is that he actually succeeded surpassing George W. Bush in unpopularity in the Arab world. And that's pretty spectacular. I think Bush was down to about 8% popularity, but Obama made it to 5 or something. And it doesn't take much of a spark to set off a conflagration. So one can expect the kind of thing that's been happening the last couple of days. Well, turning to Middle East dilemmas, there are plenty of them. They all have quite significant international ramifications and international involvement. That includes some cases which are very rarely discussed, but are actually quite important. I'll just mention a couple of them. One of them is the Middle East, North Africa, may not sometimes called that region. One of them is the place that actually initiated the Arab Spring with almost no comment. That's Western Sahara. The first big demonstration, tent city smashed up by the police, was in Western Sahara. That was November, the month before, November 2010, the month before the Tunisia outbreak. Western Sahara is the last colony, official colony. It's in Africa, anywhere for that matter. It's an official colony under the jurisdiction of the Security Council. It was supposed to achieve independence in 1975, but immediately Morocco invaded and started sending Moroccan settlers there to try to become the majority in case there's ever a referendum, as was supposed to happen. And since then there's been an ongoing war, plenty of repression, violence. If that sounds like Palestine, it's because it is. In November 2010, there was another major protest, tent city. Police smashed it up. The Sahrawi independence movement appealed to the Security Council, which is responsible, but they couldn't act because France, which Morocco is a French client, and France intervened to prevent any discussion in the Security Council, and the Western allies backed it up, so nothing ever happened. That's Western Sahara. Another topic that's been barely discussed a little bit is the very harsh repression throughout the Arab Spring, throughout the oil dictatorships, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, any effort to call a protest has been smashed. There's been a little talk about Bahrain, but not much about the rest of the region. And that proceeds with silence or support from the Western powers, so therefore it doesn't get reported, and it's accepted, in fact supported, because it's part of a much more general Western effort to prevent the threat of democracy in the region. That's always recognized to be a danger, and very good and apparent reasons. It's enough to look at the polls of opinion to see why the West will do almost anything to prevent democratic uprising there. I'll come back to that. Well, of all of the dilemmas, two are salient and related: Iran and Israel. Those are the two most dangerous countries in the world, according to polls of European opinion, although in the Arab world, judgments are different. Again, we have extensive evidence from polls by the major polling agencies. There, the major threats are regarded as Israel and the United States, very high, 80, 90%. Iran is disliked. I don't like Iran for all kinds of reasons, but it's not considered much of a threat. In fact, right before the Arab Spring broke out in Tunisia and Egypt, there were polls taken which found that maybe 10% of the population regarded Iran as a threat. And in fact, opposition to U.S. policy ran so high that a majority in Egypt, a substantial majority, thought the region would be more secure if Iran had nuclear weapons. They don't want Iran to have nuclear weapons, but I figured that might balance the real threats, the United States and Israel. That's the kind of thing that doesn't get reported. Well, in both of these cases, Iran and Israel, there are pretty straightforward ways to relieve the immediate threats. But in both cases, there are barriers to progress. And in both cases, they rely primarily in the United States and its Western allies. And that's a very important fact. And in fact, it's good news in some ways. It provides some rays of hope, because that's the one factor that we can hope to influence. Plenty of other factors, but they're out of control. This one, theoretically, ought to be under control if democracy can flourish in the West, which is not so obvious either. Well, let's take a look at Iran. There is a general picture all over the West. Iran cannot be permitted to attain what's called nuclear capability, the ability to produce a weapon if they decide to do it. There are many dozens of countries in the world that have that capability, but Japan is one, but many others. And Iran, that can't be tolerated. In the case of Iran, they're much too dangerous. Therefore, they have to be denied the right to enrich uranium that's actually guaranteed by the Non-Proliferation Treaty, which they're signers. Well, I said in the West, that's